Scientific research on the effects of consciousness-based education. In this presentation, we'll view just a few of sample findings from the hundreds of scientific research studies on this approach to education. More than 600 scientific research studies on the technologies of consciousness-based education have been conducted at over 250 universities and research institutes in 33 countries around the world. And the scientific papers from these studies are reprinted from the original research journals into 7 volumes of scientific research on Maharshi's Transcendental Meditation and TM City program, Collected Papers. These research studies show holistic enrichment of all areas of life: mind, body, behavior, and society. This development results spontaneously from experiencing the basis of all thought and action. Transcendental consciousness is associated with the unique physiological state of restful alertness, and it promotes the development of total brain functioning. Let's look first at the value of restful alertness. This chart shows increased calmness through transcendental meditation. And what is measured is galvanic skin resistance, a measure of calmness in terms of the autonomic nervous system. The higher the value, the greater the calmness here. So the control bar shows what happens during 20 minutes of sitting with eyes closed. And in contrast, during the practice of transcendental meditation, a profoundly greater effect, about 3 times the effect, of increased calmness in the physiology. At the same time, the mind is wide awake, as shown in this chart. Increased wakefulness. This shows the measures of the electroencephalogram, or EEG, associated with wakefulness. And again, the left bar shows what happens during sitting quietly with eyes closed for 20 minutes. In contrast, during the practice of transcendental meditation, again an effect more than 3 times as large. So this increased value of wakefulness is associated with the experience of the mind settling down to experience transcendental consciousness. And the next chart shows another measure of EEG functioning associated with greater use of the potential of the brain, total brain functioning. Increased EEG coherence. EEG coherence is a measure of the orderliness of brain functioning. It's a relational measure looking at 2 places on the scalp, 2 leads of the EEG on the scalp at 2 places, such as from the left and right hemispheres in the front of the brain, as shown in this study. And what is found is that this was the amount of coherence at a certain level in brain functioning in the frontal cortex among controls who are not yet practicing transcendental meditation, but sitting quietly for 20 minutes with eyes closed. And in contrast, here was the degree of EEG coherence after 2 weeks of practice of transcendental meditation. Very profound increase during the practice of transcendental meditation. So this shows that the brain functioning is growing in its integration. This development of wakeful and coherent brain functioning supports improved intellectual and academic performance. Here we see, for example, intellectual improvement, holistic improvement in intellectual performance. This was a series of studies, 3 studies done on secondary and professional students, and 5 different measures of intellectual performance were taken. And in each one, the size of the bar shows the degree to which those who began the practice of transcendental meditation, those students who were assigned to learn transcendental meditation, showed a significantly greater effect than control students. From left to right, those are increased creativity, increased field independence, which is a measure of the ability to comprehend very broadly while focusing sharply, increased practical intelligence, which is a measure of the ability to see the practical consequences of one's decisions, increased mental efficiency, which is the ability to make very rapid decisions correctly, and finally abstract intelligence, which is associated with what is usually called IQ. And this improvement in intellectual performance is also associated with actual academic performance, improved academic performance. This has been found at all levels of education, at the primary school level, secondary school level, undergraduate students in college, and here we see postgraduate academic performance. This was a group of master's degree students in Great Britain. Half the class was assigned to learn the practice of transcendental meditation. And before the practice, this was the academic performance of the students. Here we see about 50%. That means that the groups, half of the percentage of tests with the TM group higher was about half the students beforehand. That means the two groups are equivalent. Half of the transcendental meditation group was higher than the other group, half was lower, so they were about the same. 6 months later, after learning transcendental meditation, the next semester's academic performance was that more than 80% of the students in the transcendental meditation group scored higher than the controls. So the growth of total brain functioning also promotes freedom from stress and development of personality and more positive behavior. In terms of freedom from stress, this chart, decreased anxiety, shows what is called a meta-analysis that combines the results of many different studies into one overall analysis. And this was looking at the outcomes of 146 different study results. The left bar shows the amount of decrease in anxiety through mental techniques of either concentration or contemplation. The middle bar, other techniques, also includes physical techniques to try to calm the body. The third bar is the effect of transcendental meditation, about 2 to 3 times the effect of all the other procedures in reducing anxiety. In addition to reduction of stress, as mentioned, there is the increased development of the integration of the personality. This is a measure called self-development, or sometimes called ego development, which is a very comprehensive measure that takes into account mental abilities, emotional development, social development, and moral or ethical reasoning. It's very comprehensive. And it's a longitudinal study over 10 years, while students were university students who learned the Transcendental Meditation and TM City program in comparison to students at other universities, and then following them up 10 years later when they were beginning in their professional lives. What was found was no consistent change among the control university students, but among the students who began the practice of Transcendental Meditation and TM City program, there was a profoundly positive increase in this holistic measure of self-development, an increase which was in fact unprecedented in other research in this field of self-development. And in terms of the behavior of the students and the emotional stability as it relates to behavior, we see this chart increased tolerance in secondary school students. Control students among high school students who did not begin the practice of transcendental meditation showed almost no change, in contrast to very significant change among students who were assigned to learn the practice of transcendental meditation. In these days of great diversity in culture around the world, increased tolerance is something which every secondary school teacher or principal would like to see developing in their students. Another dimension of behavior is, of course, behavior in school itself. This chart shows the results of a study of secondary school students who began the practice of transcendental meditation. And after 4 months, they showed, in comparison to controls who took a health education class, reduced absentee class periods, reduced rule infractions, and reduced suspension days. That means reduced days in which they were asked to stay home because of their bad behavior. And in a broader context, this growth of physiological balance through the technologies of consciousness-based education supports more healthy behavior and better health throughout life. For example, health-related behaviors such as decreased cigarette smoking, This again is a meta-analysis looking at the results of many different research studies. And the left bar shows the degree of effect from a separate meta-analysis of all the research on standard treatments for reducing smoking, a certain effect. The middle bar shows the effect of, again, a separate meta-analysis of many studies of standard prevention programs to try to prevent smoking. And the third bar shows the results of the meta-analysis of the effects of transcendental meditation, studies on transcendental meditation showing decreased cigarette smoking. And what is very striking is that transcendental meditation is not a procedure to reduce smoking. It's a procedure to allow the mind to settle down and experience transcendental consciousness, the unified field of natural law. But this experience creates balance in the physiology, and as a result of that, the spontaneous byproduct of this greater balance is the lack of the reduction of the addictive process of smoking cigarettes. And the unique thing also about this result is that the standard treatment and prevention programs have an immediate effect that wears off over time, whereas the effect of transcendental meditation was found to be that as the students continue to practice regularly, the decline in smoking is spontaneous and becomes greater and greater. The same result was reported in this same, another result that was reported in this same study was decreased alcohol consumption as well. As a result of the improved stability of the physiology and more health-related behavior, the long-term effect of practice of transcendental meditation is better health, as measured by, here in this study, decreased medical expenses. This was a study done in Canada, in Quebec, Canada, among more than 1,400 people who began the practice of transcendental meditation, compared to matched controls, another more than 1,400 matched controls. And before they began the practice of transcendental meditation, there was virtually no difference between the groups. But after beginning the practice of transcendental meditation, there was a highly significant decrease of about 14% per year of reduction of medical expenses, that is, physicians' expenses, as measured by the government insurance. That means that, and this was per year, so this means that over the course of 3 years, a reduction of approximately 40% would be measured. So profound health, greater personal integration, reduction of stress, more positive behavior, all these benefits from the research we have seen. And in addition, consciousness-based education systematically develops more effective action and inner fulfillment throughout life. This is a study in a business setting showing increased employee effectiveness when employees began the practice of transcendental meditation. This was in the automotive industry in the United States. Among executives and employees, those who did not begin the practice of transcendental meditation showed no significant change. But in the same work sites, those who began the practice of transcendental meditation showed significantly increased effectiveness on the job, as measured on the basis of their performance. And the same study also showed increased satisfaction with professional and personal life. In contrast to the controls, who, as we see here, showed a slight worsening in their satisfaction over the course of 3 months of this study, those who began the practice of transcendental meditation showed greater satisfaction at work and at home. Development of total brain functioning for improved mental clarity, enhanced academic performance and personal growth, more positive behavior and better health, more effective action and inner happiness. All of these are the proven results of the Transcendental Meditation program. So growth of enlightened individuals and an invincibly happy society are the documented results of consciousness-based education.